anonymous Big Ten people apparently saying that they're not interested in Florida State. Well, they can't say they're interested in Florida State. You're not going to get anything out of these conferences. Welcome to Until Saturday. My name is Chris Vannini. I'm joined here by Ari Wasserman, David Ubben. We're going to talk EA Sports College Football 25, a much deeper dive into the game, including some things we are not happy about. We're going to talk about SEC Media Days, and Ari has a diet hack that he has just discovered. We're going to hold that till the end of the pod. So that's a secret we're going to hold to the end. Gentlemen, Ari, David, how's it going, Ubben? You haven't been on this pod in a minute. You're still on paternity leave.
I am.
But you want to talk about this video game, so you're back.
I am. I do. It's been interesting. Just for the record, so last week I was out of town, and we made a 2-day drive with a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old. Do not recommend.
Psychopathic behavior.
I was introduced to the dynamic of the chain reaction wake up, which we experienced multiple times. There was a poop incident that I won't get into for fear that my daughter will discover this podcast in 15 years. Anyway, it was rough, fellas. It was rough. So don't drive a long ways with 2 small children.
We're back with a Dave Ubben questionable decision making on the show. It took about a minute and 10 seconds before we got into what's this guy thinking mode.
I had to listen. We got a new baby. We got to take her, introduce her to the whole family. Everybody got to meet and hold the little one. It was fun. But buddy, we paid the price.
I got my own.
I was in St. Louis, and I didn't even get to eat at Bogart's or Pappy's. So,
tough scene. Okay, I got my own poop problem going over here with a bunch of litter of puppies that are bouncing around. But Ari, what's going on in your world, real quick here?
I took a pretty healthy BM. No poop problems over here. I feel pretty good.
All right,
but I did take some shit this morning from Dave's wife through a headset. Okay, listen, before we get into the show, and Chris, we have to mention that we're going to be talking about the college football predictions that we did in the simulations in 4 years down the path. But this morning I had some time and Dave had some time, and we were going to play the game together. So we got loaded up. I had a Wi-Fi problem. I had to restart my modem, so a little bit with me. And we're playing the game, and through the headset, I hear Dave's wife she keeps walking into the room. She's saying something, and it's becoming more and more contentious and I could feel the tension through my headset. And I know you wanted to scream, just let me cook, baby, just let me cook. We made it to halftime, and Dave's like, "Ari, I gotta go." So I understand the pain. I get it. My wife has very contentious feelings towards the PlayStation 5, but I was lucky enough to be home alone. But playing the game is an escape from the upset wife, so having to experience it through the headset while I was beating Dave's ass, and then him leaving early was a really rough way to start my day today.
Just let the record show it was 14-6 at half, and I I was getting the ball. Just so that we're clear.
Look, you knew it was coming. You knew it was coming.
Look, we talked about in our group chat that there's a support group needs to be made for our wives and some of our female colleagues who are maybe not playing the game. It's been an adjustment. I have been yelled at as well. So I think we're all on that boat right now about what the video game is doing to us. Speaking of contentious relationships and the inability to talk to people, SEC Media Days is going on right now in Dallas. I am here. Dave, you've been there before. Ari, have you ever been to an SEC Media Days?
I believe I have one time, yeah.
Okay,
I think I went to one in Atlanta. It used to be in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, they've moved it around. Yeah, they've done it in Atlanta once or twice.
Yeah, it's Atlanta next year too. So I've been hearing there's been nothing like that's jumped out as like controversial or crazy quotes. You don't have Mike Gundy talking about how he used to drunk drive in the past at this one. It's a really interesting setup because it's almost impossible to get to anybody you want to talk to outside of a big group. At this hotel at the Omni in Dallas, they've even got when a coach is done with his podium, they usher him to a secret door behind the stage, and he goes to a back hallway where nobody can access, even with credentials. And so it's been real hard to kind of do much there. But honestly, the biggest takeaway from me from, at this point, currently 3 days, about to be 4 days of SEC Media Days, is Texas. And it's just like everywhere. And so the very first coach to speak on Monday was Brian Kelly at LSU. He got multiple questions about Texas. LSU doesn't even play Texas this year. And every single LSU player got asked about what it was like getting recruited by Texas. The Texas media contingent,
border, Chris, you don't understand.
The Texas media contingent has completely taken over this event in a big way, in a way that Alabama used to when it was in Hoover or Birmingham, stuff like that. So like, this is like a new type of SEC scene here. And Ubben, I know you're on paternity leave, Ari, you've kind of had some stuff going on, but like Texas in the SEC, like that's kind of the talking point right now. How do you feel about it, Dave?
Well, listen, I think it's going to be a very different dynamic. Texas, their administrators don't necessarily agree with the assessment that a lot of the Big 12 had. Texas has this reputation of kind of being home wreckers. You look at the Southwest Conference, you look at the Big 12, Nebraska, Texas A&M, I would say Texas was very high on their reasons for leaving. Texas is a boardroom bully sometimes. Like, that's just the reality. But I think part of it is Texas is like, we're the most valuable media entity in this group. Oklahoma might have more wins, but Texas is a bigger deal. And so, hey, we're going to have things our way. In the SEC, it's going to be very different. And I think Texas probably realizes that Texas is not, a bigger deal than everyone else in the league. But that's going to take some getting used to a little bit. Some of that you see play out in sort of the boardrooms, like I said, and some of that you just talk to administrators and you kind of get some feel for how things are playing out. And then, we'll see what kind of on the field looks like. Texas, I think this conversation would be a little bit different if Texas wasn't coming off the kind of year that they had last year, where you're in the playoff. You're a couple plays away from playing for a national title. You win the Big 12 in pretty resounding fashion. Because for a long time, a lot of the frustration was, well, Texas is, a beast in the boardroom and a boll weevil on the field at times. And that's been an issue. And that's been a lot of what people have been frustrated with Texas about. And I think that dynamic changes in the SEC.
Ari, is Texas going to run the SEC?
Well, I think that it's kind of a interesting point because in the past, all the power conferences have had one or two programs that have run the show for a long period of time in its history. Like even in the past, it used to be the Big 2, Little 10, right? There are just a long history in college football of dominant programs dominating their conference. Texas and Oklahoma clearly did with the Big 12. Florida State.
The SEC is really the only league that hasn't really had that dynamic.
But we're getting to a point in college football, and it might be now or it might be in 10 years when the final phases of realignment are all set. But there's no conference now that has one team that's going to win it every year. When you think about the Big 10, Michigan won the national championship. Yeah, the Pac-12 is a coin flip every year. For the time being, that's funny. But all kidding aside, the notion that Texas will they rule the SEC is kind of a funny point because I don't think anybody's going to rule any conference anymore. Who's going to rule the Big 10? You got Oregon now. Yeah. Michigan's, rise to prominence as the defending national champions. I don't even want to go down the list of SEC programs that are viable options to win a national championship. Hell, Ole Miss is even in that discussion right now. It's in this new world of college football. We don't know what the ACC is going to look like. I think we're going to get a little bit into fake realignment rumors later in the show.
Just for the record, I would like to take Ohio State and Georgia for most conference titles in their leagues.
But it is funny to hear you say even is Texas the most important, most valuable media entity in the SEC? Is that a fact?
Well, it's close, but in the Big 12, it wasn't even a conversation. There was money that specifically said it.
Texas knew it had the power. Texas was able to do what it wanted because you said you need me. SEC doesn't need Texas, and so that's where it kind of set it up.
This is a two-pronged conversation, though. This isn't just about how good you are on the field. This is also about the power that you broker based on your value as a brand, and even that's not there anymore.
The interesting question, I think, is could any other program in the SEC or what other programs in the SEC have gotten $20 million, 15 years, $20 million from ESPN for a standalone network? I think that's an interesting question. I mean, part of this is because Texas is the state that Texas is, but part of the reason that the Longhorn Network was not successful ultimately is because, as you guys know, and anybody who lives in Texas know, it's a very, very diverse state in terms of allegiances. And so while a lot of people want the Longhorn Network, a lot of people are going to dump whatever satellite, if you're saying I'm paying $4 a month to have, the Longhorn Network on my package, I'm going to whatever service doesn't have that, Texas Tech fans, Texas A&M fans. But that's part of why the Longhorn Network was formed. I mean, the Longhorn Network was the thing that saved the Big 12 back in 2010. If ESPN wasn't going to write those checks, they were going to go to the Pac-16.
We were going to have that.
It's an interesting question. Maybe we got to get Burke Magnus on the show and ask him if any other SEC teams would get that check. I don't know, but
yeah, he was on Richard Dice's podcast recently. Nick Saban opined about Texas, and he did pick Georgia, Texas for the SEC championship game, but he also had this to say about the Longhorns.
That's always the challenge in the SEC. What kind of tickles me is all these people asking these questions about how Texas always ran the conference they were in. They're not going to run the SEC. There's a whole lot of arrogant people in a lot of places in the SEC, so they can forget all about that. They'll be a good team and a great program, and Sark will do a great job, but that's not going to be a problem.
It's a little different now, right?
What's funny about that is that Texas didn't run the Big 12. I mean, they did financially.
They ran it in the boardroom, but not on the field.
Yeah, Oklahoma ran the Big 12. Oklahoma was the one that winning all those Big 12 championships, not Texas. So Saban picks Texas, Georgia. Real quick, I think that's a good pick. Anybody disagree? Would you pick Ole Miss or anybody else?
I think it's interesting that both of those teams are coached by coordinators of Nick Saban.
That's true. Also, props to Saban for not picking Alabama, though. It would have been a really easy homer thing to be like, I got to go with my guys, every former coach does. But he didn't.
This is where I'm at with Saban. Is obviously a great football mind. I think he's going to add a lot to game day and ESPN television. But my thought was he's only going to add a lot if you're going to really talk. Are you going to nobody's asking you to just rip people, but don't sit there and spit on me and tell me that it's raining, when
don't be a mascot.
Yeah, when Alabama's 8-4 and you're like, oh, they're going to turn it around. They're going to turn it around. Tell us what's going wrong. So far from what we've seen, I watched a little bit of the draft coverage. I've watched a little bit of his spots on TV. I think if we're getting an honest, insightful Saban, I mean, it's a different sort of thing than what Herb Street does and what Lee Corso does. But I think he has a chance to become a pretty serious piece of the college football television conversation because of that football mind, and how much of that he lets us see. Yeah, I think will determine how integral he becomes to the college football viewing experience.
Is there anybody else in media in that position that you want to hear talk about college football more than Nick Saban, if he's being frank?
Maybe Charles Barkley.
No, you're right. It is Nick Saban. He's someone who is just immensely respected, obviously, and he's good at explaining things, complicated things simply, or making simple things sound interesting. He's always been good at that.
I mean, you also don't want I know this happens on College Game Day too, when Desmond Howard picks Michigan to win every game they play. Yeah, and I'm sure there's other people who do it too, but it's the authenticity piece is the most important piece when it comes to Saban. And I know you just hit on this, Dave, but somebody who is adapted with the sport as a coach certainly can adapt with understanding how it's going and where it's going, and using the institutional knowledge that he has of intimately building a powerhouse is a unique angle that nobody else in the sport or in media in the sport can come from. So authentic Saban to
talent
me,
evaluation. When he's looking at other teams, he's going to get to watch more random film than he probably ever has. And he obviously has an eye for talent. Tell me, guys, you don't understand why this guy is as good as he actually is. Let me explain why.
Tell me you tried to tamper and take that cornerback from Toledo to get to your team. That was incredibly insightful. Legitimately, it was really insightful. So
if Nick Saban is tamper with you and you rebuff him, you make it to the draft anyway, and then he talks about it on national television, guess what? I think that corner's pretty good. And I kind of respect him for not going to Bama now. Like that alone is pretty interesting.
Yeah. So let's move to Georgia here. And Kirby Smart told the media the other day that with all of these speeding and reckless driving tickets that Georgia is getting, that the NIL collective is now fining the players. And for the numbers, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution put it together. There have been 24 arrests for driving-related incidents in the program, whether it's DUI, reckless driving, or racing, since Devin Wilcock and Chandler LaCroix's death after the 2022 National Championship game. Like, this continues to happen after people died. Like, what do you think about this fining system? And do you think it's going to be enough? Because Kirby said this has been going on, the fines have been going on for more than a year, I think, at this point.
So the question that I have about this, guys, is, listen, hand up, when I was 18, like, I almost had my driver's license suspended because I had so many speeding tickets. Now, they weren't 100 miles an hour in a 40-mile zone, but I do understand the temperament or the desire for kids, especially ones that have nice cars, to let it rip. The thing I don't understand is, why is it a systemic problem there and nowhere else? Like, I don't know. I don't get what it is about the Georgia football program that seems to be rampant with these when other programs aren't. Like, what's going on in Athens? Like, I just don't, it's like, at some point, like, this is not even a coincidence anymore. The statistics are overwhelming on how often this is, and I don't know why that's the case.
And it's pretty bad reckless driving too. It's not like
reckless driving in Athens is bad enough, but like, we're talking about one of the best receivers, or one of the most exciting receivers to watch in college football, like, ruining his entire life over this. In Henry Ruggs. Like, this is like a serious thing, and I just do not understand why it has happened. Not a few times, not 5 times, like a lot. Like, what's going on there? Like, I just don't understand it.
If I'm Kirby Smart, I mean, I'd want to take a sledgehammer through the wall. I'd be going insane. And I think my thought the whole time, as these things have kind of racked up over time, and certainly, you know, this was a pretty hot button issue last offseason, and with the recent instances come back up, but it's disrespectful to the life and death of people that you were friends with. You know, they died doing this, and at the very least, you would want to learn something from that death and say, hey, I don't want to do that anymore. And the fact that you do have these incidents and these continued issues, man, it's really disrespectful to the life and death of people that you loved.
That's what has amazed me. I mean, look, every college football team has a lot of guys who get speeding tickets. If you ever go to the local police station and go through the logs, you'll see guys getting speeding tickets. It happens all the time. But to this extent is something we haven't quite really seen before.
And there's a difference between going 68 miles an hour in a 40 and going 100 miles an hour.
Exactly.
There's a difference between getting pulled over.
Yeah. It's the racing part of it. The thing that led to the death of people. Like, I can't believe that didn't wake up the culture. Like, coaches talk all the time about culture. Our culture is our guys. We work hard. They challenge each other. We do this is clearly part of Georgia's culture, to have racing among players in their cars. And it's such a big problem. And so on the topic of fines, some people tried to clarify that, like, it's not a fine. So, like, my first thought when I heard this, when Seth Emerson, our colleague, told me, he's like, yeah, Kirby said they're fining the players. My first thought was, how is that written into their contracts, or where is it written into their contracts? Because players are on contracts now, and it's not with the coach; it's with somebody else. So apparently, a lot of players have what are called morals clauses in these contracts that can withhold payments. Some people tried to say it's not a fine. It's essentially the same thing. It's a fine of withholding future money, essentially, whatever it is. But I found that topic specifically interesting, because that's now part of college football in a way it wasn't before, that you can find the players for things, but you find them via a third party. Who makes that call? Is Kirby Smart telling the collective to find a player? The coach is not supposed to be telling people what to do with the money, So like, it's this weird door that's opened up now as we see more and more of things that go on.
I like the concept of fines for like breaking the law and, like you said, the morality clauses. I think I'm very curious if we're going to see a coach overstep the bounds of like, hey, Johnny QB3 was late to our meeting yesterday. I need you to fine him, 3% of his paycheck this month. And like, now that's going to be a sticky issue. But yeah, I think the clear morality clauses, I mean, I'm curious how widespread this is among collectives. As we have chronicled and talked about, it's very hard to get these contracts. We've seen a few of them, but the exact verbiage and how it all works is something that we've tried to report on and write about in the last year or two since collectives have kind of taken hold. And the exact culture of that and how all those things work, the inner machinations, are pretty under wraps. And the fact that it's been going on over a year, and this is the first kind of we're hearing about it, is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, here's the take, if you want to take for the podcast. So you said something that struck me, Dave, and I actually felt the same thing. Like, when I watched the clip of Kirby having to address it, I cannot imagine that man in his office when he hears it happened again.
Yeah, I would lose my mind.
Like, because it's like, at what point is the whatever you're doing there just not working in terms of getting through to people? So my thing is yeah, I understand that there's a financial penalty in some regard if you go down the rabbit hole of NIL and those fines. But if I'm the head coach of Georgia, I might penalize them the old-fashioned way. If you get caught racing your car, you're suspended for half the season. You're going 100 miles an hour in a school zone, you're off the team. Like, you have to do something to show the program that it's no longer tolerated. Because, like, I don't know, how long this can go on before, like, something awful happens again. Like, it's not a good look. It's dangerous. People die. Henry Ruggs took someone's life. He ruined his own. Like, there is too much at stake here, and I don't know if fining somebody $10,000, $5,000, $4,000 is going to stop somebody from driving 100 miles an hour in a school zone. So, like, that's my take, is penalize them with what really hurts them, which isn't a little bit less NIL money. It's playing time and availability as they're trying to become professional football players.
Yeah. I mean, meanwhile, we have Mike Gundy last week saying he's not going to suspend a guy who got a DUI because it's going to hurt the team. So this is kind of a weird spot we're in. Let's move to conference realignment, but non-realignment updates. This is just becoming a thing now that people have to talk about. So SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey was asked about the possibility of more realignment, and there's Florida and Clemson are suing the ACC trying to get out of the league. And Sankey replied, quote, "I've responded 3 times where our focus lies. Our focus is on our 16 members. I have a responsibility to pay attention, but I'm certainly not going to fuel speculation on what happens next. We can certainly remain at 16 for a long, long time and remain incredibly successful. In fact, as I understand it, the issue is agreements have been signed and decisions have been made among a conference," meaning the ACC, and the question is, are those going to be honored as they were established? Apparently, that's for a court to decide. So people are running wild with all this Florida State, Clemson, Big 10, SEC, Big 12 stuff. And frankly, like, nothing can happen right now because they are locked in with the ACC until 2036. And there is not going to be any legal resolution on that situation for a while. The court cases are all ongoing still in various courts against each other. And we have no idea. It's going to take a long time to sort that out unless the two sides settle. And the ACC has no incentive to settle right now at the moment because it's doing okay in court. And so you got this Big 12 stuff out there that I don't think is really anything right now. And you've got anonymous Big 10 people apparently saying that they're not interested in Florida State. Well, they can't say they're interested in Florida State because if they say they're interested in Florida State or Clemson, that's legal tampering. You're not going to get anything out of these conferences
tortious interference, Chris. Let's drop it.
It's right. You're not going. This is not going to be Oklahoma, Texas announce SEC a stunner like in the middle of August. The only thing that can happen next is Florida State announcing or Clemson announcing it's leaving, and then figure out what damage comes after that. Because is that going to implode the ACC? If it does, I can tell you North Carolina is more interesting to the Big Ten and the SEC than Florida State and Clemson are. And so we don't know where that's going to go. Nothing has happened yet. It's all waiting on Florida State and Clemson and whether or not they're going to announce that they're going to leave and then figure that out. But they can't just leave and say we're going somewhere. And they can't leave and then the SEC says, hey, we want you. It's not until there's a legal resolution. And Florida State needs to get leverage for a negotiation to get out or hope it can blow up the ACC and go from there. Big 12, I wouldn't put much on that right now at the moment. Do you guys have any thoughts on this realignment chatter?
No, there's just so many moving parts. I mean, this has been the most complicated sort of awkward song and dance that we've seen. I covered the sort of halfway implosion of the Big 12 in 2010, and that was a little more clear. Obviously you had a TV deal that was coming up, and decisions had to be made. But this situation is a lot more complicated, and there's a lot of moving parts. And unlike a lot of situations that we've seen, it'd be one thing, and I think there'd almost be more motivation on the part of Florida State and Clemson if it was clear that if they got out, they had a home. Now, do I think if the rubber hits the road that the Big Ten of the SEC is probably taking Florida State or Clemson? I feel like ultimately, if they get out of these golden handcuffs that they are in, it's hard for me to see a world in which they sort of stiff arm them. Like maybe you take a pay cut, whatever that looks like. I think they probably still end up there, but there's a long way to get to there. And I think that lack of a clear home on the other side of the fence sort of complicates a lot of this because again, you could, what is it, Chris? $500 million they need?
At least $500 million each. Yes. That's what Florida State guesses it would take to create a settlement to get out. Because there isn't an actual price. They're just estimating that's how much it would cost.
Mm-hmm. Well, so if you want to start, today we're recording this on Prime Day. If somebody wants to start the competitor to Amazon, take over Amazon, and then donate $500 million to get them out of the league, that's the clearest route. Maybe by the time you can do that, that wouldn't take what, Chris, 6-9 months probably. So if you could do that, you could get them out. That seems like an option.
The big key in all of this is that early 2025, ESPN has to decide whether or not it's going to pick up the option on the ACC TV contract until 2036. We didn't know this until the SEC filed this lawsuit and put this into the public domain.
Because of the secret documents.
ESPN was not happy about that, and neither was ACC and everybody. So if you're Florida State, your best option here is to essentially announce that you're leaving, figure it out, hope in all of this, the ACC kind of collapses and ESPN decides not to pick up that option, in which case maybe then you have a legal case to not have to pay $500 million because that TV contract doesn't go to 2036. Like that's kind of the only play here. Ari, do you have any thoughts on this stuff?
I mean, I think you guys pretty much covered it. I do think it's funny to see where some of these rumors are starting. And I think that at times we need to be cognizant of who we're listening to and who we believe.
The people who are on Twitter who are wrong about conference realignment all the time, stop retweeting them. Stop listening to them, please.
If you've never heard a large college sports story from someone and they break a giant story, it's probably not accurate. It's the same concept in the NBA or the NFL when people who like aren't in with agents break like trade news and half the time it's wrong. It's like, okay, like there's a reason why these people like it's a not to get too journalism nerdy here, but it's a sourcing standards here. Like you could get somebody, a source, to say, oh yeah, the Big Ten doesn't want, so and so, or whatever you want to say about wherever this Florida State Clemson thing goes. And you could say that, and you could run a story, and a lot of people would read it, but that doesn't make it fact. It's guessing.
Who is that person? What do they know? How many people agree with him? All these different things come into play. And that's why, a lot of times, especially at The Athletic, like we might not always be first on everything, but we're always right because we use those journalistic standards that aren't there on Twitter.
one last thing about this. On Wednesday, the Florida Attorney General announced that they were going to get a copy of the ACC ESPN TV deal and make it public. And they announced it as some big win. We're going to reveal these secrets. That's not the case in reality. It's going to be a redacted version that they get. All the trade secrets and all the specific ESPN details are not going to be made public. And also, there's already an agreement with Florida State to give that to Florida State and make it public through the court proceedings. So there was a hearing set next week in this TV contract case. It essentially, what's going to become public was already going to become public, and the Attorney General is just trying to kind of save face and make it look like it was a big win. It's nothing we weren't already going to know. We're not going to find any juicy details on it, but you'll probably hear more about that in the coming weeks as it comes out. So these conversations, issues we're having with the game. We'll get to the playoff stuff in a moment. But so Dave had to quit against Ari Wednesday morning when we played. Dave and I played right before we started recording this podcast. He was Colorado. I was Alabama. Yes, I know I was Alabama. You can call me a jerk for doing that. That's fine. I was leading by 7 at halftime. Ubben comes back with 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. I threw a couple of picks. I got too excited, and he won. So Dave, you didn't get the early copy like some of us, and you were very, very, very upset about it. You also didn't have access to a console anyway. You were struggling out there for a while.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
You've had a couple days now. What are your early impressions here?
So I agree with a lot of what you guys have said, which is it's college football, man. Like all of the things that make it feel like college football, the stadium aesthetics, the sounds, you feel like you're college football. If you're in a stadium or you're covering a game or watching it on TV, it's a completely different product in the NFL. Personally, sure. I like the NFL, but the thing that I love the most about college football is a lot of the bells and whistles and the schematic diversity. In the NFL, you got some different things, but there's nothing like college football where there's 100 different systems and people are ripping things off and having hybrids and all that stuff. It's really, really interesting to me. And this game gets that right. I don't mean this necessarily as a criticism because there are realities of making a game. But, when you had college football 11 and you had college football 13, it's mostly the same game. Like they tweak some stuff, you add some new things and all that stuff. This really does feel like a completely new game. I was not one of the Madden reskin truthers, just for the record. I was like, there's too much invested in this game. There's too many criticisms of Madden that they're not going to do that.
I reported for 3 years that it was not a reskin of Madden.
Yes,
so
exactly.
If you read The Athletic, you knew that. I kept telling people this.
It doesn't feel like it really at all. The gameplay is a very, very fun situation. I play kind of all the modes except Ultimate Team. I like a little Road to Glory. I did that today. Shout out to the Oregon State Beavs. I am currently gaining your respect back. I beat Oregon. I'll play some Dynasty, and I do like to play online, but I'm taking some time to get my feet underneath me and figure out who I want to play with and what playbook I want to use and all that stuff before I go online. But all that is to say, I've had a lot of fun. It's a good product. Like if you buy it, you're not going to be disappointed. I do agree that the drumline, Chris, what you brought up, too much. It's too much. You pay for all this music. You have Sandstorm, you have Enter Sandman, you have others. Like use
don't
them,
have Enter Sandman, but yes. Yeah, I go back to the
some
fight songs. I wish you could just turn on. Like, I wish there was a menu. Just like, do you want drumline or do you want fight songs or all of it? Just like, I don't know. The drumline's kind of good.
Drumline, fight songs, stadium songs that you paid for. Like some stuff. Like one thing that's weird. So Tennessee I forget which the circumstance. I think it's for third downs. They play Welcome to the Jungle. It doesn't really make sense. I think they just started doing it and then people do it and I don't know. And so hearing that, I'm taken back to the press box where I'm like, yeah, oh yeah. Cause I think I counted, in my time covering the Tennessee beat, I heard the first 30 seconds of Welcome to the Jungle 117 times. I think I did the math at some point. It was a wild number.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't tweet this out. We'll get into some of the criticisms.
Yeah, we're gonna let Ari go on
Guys,
this in a second here.
If we're gonna have player names, especially for the 50 most prominent people in the sport, listen, we're gonna have to get some pronunciation going. In the old games, you could sort of brush it off because it's like, well, it wasn't in the game, even though they'd say like guys' names. So like Nico Iamaleava, I can't believe Tennessee fans are not like storming the EA, or Reese Davis's house. Because if I recall correctly, I did play a game as Tennessee the other day. I believe Nico is Yamaleva. It is Iamaleava. I counted. There's 6 syllables.
Okay.
And there's 6 syllables.
I've not figured this out yet. It's kind of like DJ Uwangalele. I'm going to have to hear it several times before I get it right.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
Nobody even tries. They just say Nico. So so say it again so I know what it is.
It's the answer is Iamaleava. In the game, it's like Yamaleva or something. It's like not even remotely close. I thought that was funny. Surprising. I can't believe they're not more furious. I hadn't heard about people getting mad about this, but I feel like it'll only be a matter of time. Anyway, that stuff's kind of silly. But there are some legitimate criticisms of the game. Ari, before I let you cook on a thing that I think we agree on, one thing with the passing meter, it feels a little too determinative. Like, if a guy's kind of open and you hit the meter right, that's a completion, like 90% of the time so far from what I've seen. And if the meter's not right, you like can't thread the needle at all.
Yeah.
I don't love that. Like, if it's tight and you hit the meter right, you should still have some level of unpredictability in terms of completing the pass. And also, slightly stupid, but also in Road to Glory, a lot of text interviews with reporters. Please, recruits, I'm begging you. Don't ask for text interviews, even if people want to do them. I'm not going to do a text interview with you.
Yeah, we're not doing text interviews. We want to talk to you on the phone. All right. So something we couldn't test out in the review because the servers weren't on is online play. And so when Ari and I talked about this recorded on Sunday, we hadn't gone through that yet. We have now gone through that, and we've had some issues. Ari, I'm clearing out. You can go here.
I've said on the show while talking about what I was most looking forward to about this game was that my favorite thing to do, and I know that people love Dynasty and doing all that, is online head-to-head play. And the thing that I take exception to is that it's completely and utterly different than it's ever been, and it was not explained to us. Now, I think even in this most recent Madden, you can hit quick game, play now, and it loads you up with somebody random, and then it keeps your record, and you have a ranking, and there's a rankings chase, right? Like you win a game, your record improves. There's a draw to that. There's a competitiveness to it. It's like you want to win because it matters to what you're ranked and what your record is. That still exists in the college football game, but it's a little bit different. It's the road to the CFP mode you have to play, and it bunches you up and you have to win or play 10 games, and then it re-ranks you, and then it puts you into a tier. It is the ranking system. But in this ranking system, you're only playing games that are 3-minute quarters, which I don't understand that. I think that there was data that they found that people don't want the games to last as long, even though I've never felt that this was taking too long.
Yes.
In one way, they've combated the shorter quarters is that you cannot use the chew clock mode, which you could do in the 5-minute quarters if you were trying to wind down the game. Now I've been playing
worse,
that
though, because then I got to sit there and watch you stand over the ball. You can still chew the clock.
And I found myself standing over the ball. Yeah. So I don't understand this temptation, and it's not just EA Sports, but just in business and in general, the need to mess with things that are already great. Like, I thought that the way it used to go was really great. I came into this year when the servers came up hoping that it would just be quick match, find a random opponent, plug the headset in and run. That's not the way it is. There's a whole other mode, and I understand where their heart is. They want to, put you with people that are evenly matched. You get extra points for playing with teams that are worse than whatever tier you're playing. So there's a bunch of tier 1 teams like Georgia and Michigan and Texas and Ohio State, and all those teams are tier 1. And if you play with Kent State and you win a game, you get more points. Like, I understand that. That said, to change the entire mechanism to force you to play 3-minute quarters, and then not explain it or have any thought as to why they did that, explain to the people who loved it that much. Like, for as much as we talk about how much we love Dynasty Mode and how much we love these different things, there is a large sect of people, myself included, that was most looking forward to just playing random people online, trying to build a record and get a good ranking. Mm-hmm. And that, from what I understand, is completely different. So I don't know if people make a stink about this, if they can change the time. I think it's possible that there's a patch that they can make it 5-minute quarters. I just don't know that I've ever thought that the length of the games are a problem. And especially now when you have 2-minute quarters, if you want to shorten the game experience, I would probably cut down on the 45 seconds or 2 minutes of the pregame speech of people running onto the field and all that stuff. And I understand it's all part of the game, but you don't need to have that part online if you're concerned about length of time it takes. But that, to me, is a bigger time suck than it would have been to have the extra, 2 minutes on the quarters, because you have to wait 3 minutes before the game even starts. So it is just disappointing to me. Now, this road to the CFP is fun. It's been my new thing. I've played 10 games. I've won 8 and lost 2, both to Oregon. I think it's going to be something that I get used to. I just don't love the choice to change the simplest part of the game, which is online head-to-head. And I certainly don't like the decision to not explain it with all the media availability and all the things that we had coming into the release of the game. There are people that I know and online, and my friends are like, how do I just play somebody? Like, and they didn't know what road to CFP meant, and they never even went in there to explore it. They had the game all day, and they're like, I don't know how to play somebody online that's not my friend.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like a single season mode.
It's kind of the name of it is misleading.
So I had to ask them this when they announced things, when I went down there in May, they told us what road to the CFP was. I thought, oh, this is interesting. We didn't know it replaces the normal online play. And so the main key issues that people have had: 3-minute quarters, which you can't change. You can't do custom playbooks. You can't choose other playbooks. And I believe you can't change uniforms. And so the idea apparently was that it's supposed to be more realistic. So you don't have Alabama running Army's playbook or running the triple option. It's more meant to be kind of a simulated real game.
I kind of like that, just for the record.
And that's fine,
but it should be an option. It shouldn't be the only thing.
That's one thing I know. If somebody wants to run Army's playbook with Alabama and I run into you like online, that's kind of the part of the allure for me of playing online is it's unpredictable. Where the computer, you kind of know what you're going to get. When you go online, you really have no idea, and I kind of like the sort of mystery. And to Ari's
point, we didn't get a road to the CFP deep dive like we did for Dynasty Mode and all these other things. So a lot of people are just learning this now, and we couldn't include that in the review because there was nobody online. I did get in to road to the CFP and somehow got matched up with a guy who was Florida State, but he wasn't there, and they kicked him out of the game. I got a win, so I was technically the 7th ranked player in college football 25 at that time. I took a picture of it, so I can always say I was the former number 7 ranked.
I'm 8-2 right now, and I'm in the top 70,000, so I feel pretty good about it. But I do have
there was like 600 something thousand people that were online the other day. I saw that's crazy.
I do have text from one of the people involved in making the game. Can I say this real quick?
Yes.
I just this is important because we're talking about it, and then I'll let you go.
Yeah.
But the design decision was to have them be quicker games to get people playing more. The mode is bare bones, but it is pretty fun. The goal was not to have every single game be Ohio State versus Georgia. When you go online, you get rewarded for using smaller schools. So I think they're trying to promote a more vast usage of the teams that they've worked so hard to build. And they want different types of matchups, and they want you, if you like to run the triple option, to have to run it with a team that runs the triple option. And I understand all those things. And I think this mode would be great on its own. I don't know that I love that it replaced head-to-head, and I really don't love that there was no explanation about it. And my hope is that there will be 5-minute quarters eventually, because honestly, when you play 3-minute quarters, the game is completely different. The strategy is different. For me, I hope to kick off the ball, and then if I can somehow get an interception or go up by 7 by halftime without receiving, then I get the ball back with a lead with 6 minutes left in the game, and I can run the whole clock out in a single drive.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more daunting because you can't chew the clock. But if you get down 14-0 in a 5-minute quarter game, you have a chance to come back. But if you get down 14-0 in a 3-minute game, it's a hell of a lot harder if the person starts playing keep away with you. And it just changes the entire dynamic of trying to play a full game. It's all about how you start in the first quarter. And then if you happen to have a fast start, then you can just chew the clock out for the rest of the game. And that sucks.
Now, I will say, as far as the Road to CFP mode, I also play FIFA online. I like the way that they've set it up because for me, so like the way they do it in FIFA is a very simple promotion, relegation, title. Like, there's points, obviously 3 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, all that stuff. And the game, my only criticism when you had quick game is every game kind of feels the same. But when you're doing, I haven't played Road to the CFP mode yet, so I don't know exactly how it's set up. But in FIFA, like if you have one game left and you need 2 points to be promoted, that game feels huge to you. And I think I like that it adds a little bit more stakes. But I'm with you on the 5-minute quarters thing, Ari. Here's the thing. I started playing this game. I mean, I'd kind of played earlier versions, but I first started really like religiously playing this game, NCAA Football 2002 on the PlayStation 2 with Chris Winkie on the cover. Okay. Yeah. And every game, that was 2002. That game came out in 2001. We are in 2024.
That was 23 years ago that game played. My God.
First of all, yikes. Second of all, in the time since that game came out, up until like we have been talking about this in the last couple days about the online play, you just 5-minute quarters is what it is. That's just the way the game's played. That's how you play your dynasty games. That's how you play your online games. That's how you play against your friends. I don't know who decided this, but that's just the way that it has been. And I have never had any
point about the quarters, though, Dave.
So switching it is insane.
Anybody who has been playing this game for as long as we've been playing it understands, too, that because college football is such an expansive universe of offensive styles and playbooks and game plans, sometimes it takes a quarter to feel out your opponent. Like there are times where I'm down 14-0 because the person figured out a trick play or something that I can't defend and they keep running it. And then eventually I figure out how to stop it. And then I have 3 quarters to figure it out.
Online,
but if you,
Mm-hmm.
If you play online and somebody does something, if somebody's doing something that you need a minute to get your bearings around, they could be up 14-0 going into halftime in the snap of a finger and you can't win. And that sucks.
Yeah. I hope they switch to 5 minutes. The 3 minutes is crazy to me that you would just sort of punt this sort of industry standard. It's been that way forever. So it's a weird decision to me.
Yeah, look,
I will say that's weird. The game itself, I love. We got to go 5-minute quarters.
The game's great.
I'm loving Dynasty mode. I'm loving gameplay. Like when I played Ubben, like that's fun. Like we're getting the handle of stuff. Like I don't want to really go online until I've kind of got a real handle. Dave.
That's where I'm at right now.
So like it's all really good. Ultimately, it seems like their decision to do 3 minutes was because they thought they could get more people in by doing shorter games. But you got to know that's going to upset your heavy users. And there's been a lot of backlash to that. I've seen that on Reddit, on Twitter, and a lot of different things. So, and I think the game hasn't even fully launched yet. It comes out Friday, the 19th. Mm-hmm. So, like you mentioned, there were already 600,000 people. There were already 600,000 people online. Theoretically, you would think it's a pretty easy patch to just change it to 5-minute quarters. But that also
I don't know that for a fact.
We've already got people playing games and have a record. And do you change the game on them at that point? I don't know, but changing it to 5-minute quarters would be really easy, you would think. I'm very surprised that they did this and did it in a way where they didn't really tell us that this was kind of the only option.
Listen, I have eaten up every ounce of content about this game for 2 years. I found out about the 3-minute quarters thing yesterday.
From me,
when Ari texted
about
it. When Ari was texting me like, what's happening? What's happening?
Well, I texted the group. I was like, does anybody know how to play a head-to-head game online?
Yeah.
Like, that's all I wanted to do was get online.
I think you figured it out. You'll learn to love the 10-game structure.
I mean, it's growing on me because it's my only option, but I like
the concept. the concept of road to the CFP, I totally get. The idea is you're grouped on how good you are, and this is what EA Sports told me. They said, look, we've had people, they go online, they play their first online game, they lose 50-0, they never want to play it anymore. Like that's who they're trying to get those people back in, and that's what that mode is for. Just like it was in FIFA, which is a totally fine idea. Literally the only issues I think I would have with this are 3-minute quarters and custom playbooks changing playbooks. Like two very simple things that you could change. And
I will say the playbooks thing is a reasonable debate. I disagree with the way that it is now, but if you don't want, Air Force running the air raid, and I get what you're doing. But I disagree.
It's not like you're scouting your opponent and you're surprised by their playbook when you come out. Like you play the game, you figure out what they like to run, and you adjust. That's what the 5-minute quarters.
And by the way, I've played 10 games in this mode so far. Nobody's playing with Kent State. Like everybody's Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama. Like I haven't played anybody that isn't a tier 1 team yet. So like I like the notion of.
I think that's my only criticism with. That's my only criticism with FIFA when I play is there's like 300 teams on the game and you only see like 10 or 15 online. It's like all the same.
But the problem is that in the world of realism, they made teams good and bad like they are in real life, and it's incredibly hard to beat somebody who has a much better team than you because it's really hard for those teams to win in real life. So like you have to be really, really, really good at the game to be Bowling Green and to beat Alabama because it's just really, really hard to do that. And they also have made it extremely difficult to play on the road in this game. I don't know if you guys have had this. If you've had this experience, but like
I played Chris on the road earlier. It was tough.
The home field advantage like really does make it difficult to hot route and audible and do all the things that are necessary. I've noticed a lot of false start penalties if you take too long with pre-snap adjustments. And so it's like if you're going into this mode and you want to pick Memphis and you're going to play somebody who's playing Alabama, like odds are you're going to get your ass kicked because odds are in real life Memphis would get their ass kicked. So like the promotion of the other teams and getting more points for winning makes sense. But also it's really, really hard and not fun when you're a smaller team playing against Georgia because you're going to get your ass kicked.
Two things we forgot before we move on. The read option X to pull is insane. They reversed it. It's I read it and I was like, that sucks, but I think you'll adjust. It's still hard to adjust. I'm still having to think
a lot of losses because because like listen, it has been 10 years since we've played this game, but the controls and the feel of the game are ingrained into our muscle memory, and it is really hard when you're zone reading. Like I've done it this way for years and years and years.
You have to get the read right, or it doesn't work.
How many times I've gotten dropped for a loss in this game so far because I pushed the wrong button because my body knows what to do in that. You're gonna have to rewire your DNA in that one a little bit.
And
that's
also
not
the
end of the world.
Pre-snap adjustments. They changed some of the stuff where like I can't do what I'm trying to do, like the shading coverages and still that you can do. Like I do a ton of shading coverages based on situations. Like that stuff is still normal, but like moving your linebackers, moving your defensive lines, they like changed it a little bit. It's not a lot of second nature to me.
Yeah, it's a lot of extra buttons with the right joystick and figuring that out.
It's like the 5-minute quarters thing. Why are we tweaking this? It was fine. You can do all kinds of stuff. Like, what are we doing?
Well, because they wanted to open up to more things you can do, so you can't just hit an L bumper to move your linebackers. Essentially.
I mean, I guess
so it is what it is there. So it's an adjustment. We still very much love the game. We just now that we've played some online and had some more, wanted to get
headline here is we love the game. The subhead is please fix some dumb stuff.
Essentially, yes. So let's finish this podcast with the CFP simulations. This has been very fun to do. A lot of people have been doing them. I think by the time this podcast comes out, Max may have done his 25 years in advance simulation. But we all, two of us simulated a season in a handful of seasons in Dynasty to get some playoff fields to see what they look like. And I want to see if you guys, how accurate you think it is or how fun you think it is. Cam, I don't know if producer Cam is going to put these on the screen for the YouTube channel, but we've got one here at the end I want to get Ari's video reaction to. I don't know if he's seen it yet.
I think I've seen it. So, yeah.
Okay. So this first playoff was pretty normal. other than the one that I did, is pretty normal. Your number one seed was, your seeds were, I think the seeds got deleted. It was USC number 1, Miami number 2, Kentucky number 3, Iowa State number 4, got a Michigan-Georgia national championship. Michigan won. That was pretty normal. Rice got the 12 seed. Rice has popped up a lot in my simulations. Rice and Charlotte are the group of 5 teams for me that have been doing pretty well. But you guys can see that in the notes. I don't know if you can see it on the YouTube, but do either of you guys have any thoughts on this first bracket that I got here?
We both had Ohio State and Miami in the championship in our first bracket, which is very, very interesting.
I got Miami, Ohio State, I think in my year 2 it might have been.
And Ohio State won both of those matchups in very close fashion, so that must have just been BS PI penalties at the end of the game.
I was wondering about that, yeah. Craig Krenzel died so Will Howard could walk, yeah.
Yeah, so in my second year, Appalachian State got the 4 seed and got to the quarterfinals to play Georgia. Charlotte was the 9 seed, meaning they beat Florida State to get to the second round.
Baby.
To get to the second round where they lost to Georgia. Boston College is the 3 seed. They beat Stanford in the second round. They beat Texas A&M in the semis. They go to the championship game, lose to Georgia. Georgia over BC in the championship game. That was really fun. We had all ACC corner of the bracket there with Stanford, SMU, and Boston College, who are all in the same conference, which was pretty hilarious. The rest of mine, the next year I had a Clemson Pitt national championship. Nothing unusual there. And then I had and then my fourth year, the championship game was Florida State, Iowa State. And Iowa State won the 2027 national championship as the 6th seed. So and that was
Matt
pretty
Campbell
fun.
Turned down the Michigan job again after that win.
Yes, but Ubben. So go describe your first one and then describe your second one, because your second one was.
So I was also tracking Heisman. The first year was pretty normal. Will Howard won the Heisman. Ohio State went 13-3, beat Miami in the championship. I guess that's reasonable. The top 4 seeds were Texas Tech at number 2, which they won the Big 12, so I guess that's reasonable. I was a year early on Texas Tech. Alabama, the 4 seed. Ohio State, the 3. Miami, number 1. No team in the playoff bracket with fewer than 3 losses. Or, excuse me, Texas Tech had 2 losses. But that's going to take some getting used to. I don't think we'll see that very often, but it's definitely possible.
The game does not see anybody going undefeated anymore. We are constantly getting like 2 and 3 loss national champions, which may be the case, again, with the Big Ten and the SEC being what they are. Yeah. And so, like, seeing this visualized on the game's bracket of like, hey, like, we might have 3 loss national champions now. I do think like that is possible.
It's weird.
And going through these simulations is kind of like mentally preparing me for that.
Yeah. So Will Howard gets out of the Avery Anderson situation or Avery Johnson situation, goes to Ohio State, wins the national championship, wins the Heisman Trophy. Congrats to him. So I wasn't going to do anything because I just simmed it. So I took the Army job because with respect to the troops, I figured they were going to be mostly not in the playoff chase, and you got to take somebody, and I didn't want to scroll all the way down, so I just did Army. But inexplicably, I got the Oklahoma job. I was just simming everything, so now I was suddenly Oklahoma's coach. And then I ran Oklahoma into the ground before being hired at Miami. I don't know how that all worked. I didn't make any of those decisions, but I was talented at failing upward. Year 2, Ty Simpson won the Heisman, and this, you gotta see this corner of the bracket. Unbelievable. Forget the top 4 seeds. This is unbelievable. Oregon won the championship in year 2 over Nevada, but Nevada came out as the 12 seed, beat 5th seed Pitt, and then advanced to play 4 seed. Wait for it, Trent Dilfer's UAB Blazers. Shout out to Trogdor the Burninator. They beat them, and then they beat Ohio State.
Wait. Ari, how excited are you for a UAB Nevada second round playoff game?
Let me ask you guys this, because this is year 2 in your simulation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What would have to happen?
Nevada's bad in the game, by the way. They won like 1 or 2 games last year.
What would have to happen for Nevada to win the national title or play for the national title in year 2, starting right now in real life?
I mean, I think asteroids would have to be involved, no question.
No.
Like this, for a game that is so real. Like what happened in this dynasty that could have?
I don't know, but I love it.
It cannot happen.
I think the funniest thing about this bracket is on the other side, Alabama beats NC State in round 1, then it has to go beat Georgia, then it has to play Oregon and loses. Meanwhile, Nevada gets Pitt and UAB before it gets to this final.
And here's
4.
the funniest thing about this bracket that you guys aren't talking about. Like Penn State won a playoff game? Come on.
Yeah, over
That's
USC.
on the other side. I guess they're playing USC, so they probably scored. They scored a bunch of 65 points in that game. But it's like
a weird
Penn
all
State,
Big
the
Ten
11
corner there
seed
too. I didn't think
Penn
about
State,
that.
the 11 seed, is 100% on brand. Okay, them winning a big game. I don't know about that one.
Here's how Nevada makes the 2025 college football playoff. Steve Sarkisian in 2024 does something just so despicable that every Texas player follows Jeff Choate over to Nevada because he's the coach there now. And the Texas roster just goes to Reno. But apparently they're not good enough to get better than the 12 seed. They're a really good group of 5 team, but not so good that they're still the 12 seed. They're not better than UAB. UAB is the best group of 5 team in that group. So yeah, so like a lot of people are throwing these out there. Again, Max has his 25-year simulation. I love these. I love seeing how wacky it gets. I don't want it to be realistic. Like we've had some, I've gotten some that are Charlotte cornerback Max Brown won the Heisman in my second year of my USF dynasty. I have no idea how that happened. And then in my other one, the one I simmed through, some Georgia Tech wide receiver won the Heisman. I like this. I like it to be crazy because it makes me think of things. The next time I see Charlotte play and Max Brown is there, I'm going to think in my head, that guy's pretty good. He won the Heisman Trophy in my dynasty, it's helping me think of more teams and more players. Don't you think
that it should happen though in year 5 or 6? Like, I don't understand why it's happening in year 2. Like, that's the weirdest thing. Know. It's like, you should have normalcy for the first 3 or 4 years. And then the teams like BC and FIU and Nevada get really good in 2029. That would be fun. Mm-hmm. But you have a 14-2 team in the group of 5 that is the 12 seed and then beats Ohio State in the semifinal and plays for a national championship. That's not a simulation. That's fantasy land. To me, it's this game is so real and so I don't even know how you could go from being that real to going to something that is so completely outrageous.
Here's the thing.
Always kind of been like this, though. I don't know why. I can't explain it.
I don't think your 2027 one was in the doc, and that's the best. That's actually
I think it really is. Good. Well, I can run it down.
I don't. So
there's a Domino's
explain
logo.
Who made the it's not in the it's not in the doc, but it's in the Slack. Do you want me to read who's in the championship game, or do you want to take it?
We'll skip ahead. 2026, Mac Brown wins at, I assume, SEC member North Carolina, beats Michigan in the national championship. It's a pretty normal bracket. There's not a lot of spice in there.
Yeah.
But in 2027, we get a national championship game featuring the 12th seeded Fresno State Bulldogs, who knocked off Georgia in their first game, facing off against 11 seed Kansas State in the national championship game. Fresno beats Georgia, Wisconsin, and Tennessee to get there. And Fresno State, Tim Skipper, now their head coach, if I believe that's correct.
No, it's got to be Trent Dilfer. Trent Dilfer took UAB to a 4 seed, and then he went to Fresno State, his alma mater, and he led Fresno State to a national championship.
I'll give it to you. They beat Kansas State 31-13 to win the national title and be the 2027 national champion.
Ari, what would you do if a 12 seed met the 11 seed in the championship game? A Fresno State, Kansas State national championship. How pumped are you for that?
I think you have to stop covering the sport,
I actually think if it actually happened, it would be incredible.
It would.
I think it would be cool. If it happened in real life.
We get that in basketball sometimes.
Yeah.
We get it in basketball until the end, and then the final.
Are they going to add a 3-point shot in college football? Because if they do,
San Diego State played for the national championship last year, so stuff like that happens. The funniest part of this 2027 one, by the way, Ubben, I don't know if we pointed it out, all top 4 seeds lost in the second round. UCF was number 1. UCF's number 1, they lost. Miami 2, they lost. Alabama 3, they lost. And Wisconsin 4, they lost. This really was the craziest possible bracket that you could come up with, where none of the 4 seeds advance. A 12 seed wins the national championship.
I have added it to the doc if we want to scroll down very briefly for the YouTube viewers. It's there. There it is. I didn't make it up. I promise.
Yes. Yeah, he texted this to us earlier, and we just couldn't believe it. We wanted to hide it from Ari and get his reaction live, but I think he saw it at the time. But like, it's fun that the game is taking it in weird directions. Because if the game just had Georgia and Alabama and Michigan as the best teams every year, like, whatever. Have some fun. It's fun that UAB's the 4 seed or Charlotte's the 9 seed and not even the best G5 team or something like that. So don't change this, EA Sports. If there's a patch, don't make the playoff more boring.
Yeah, there's always been like there've been a handful of times like in the NCAA, I would win it and then I'd show up and it'd be like, I think there was a time when Air Force like met me in the national championship. There's some random teams.
There was a time, by the way, in the old March Madness video game, I don't know, 05 or 06 or whatever it was. Where 16 seeds were regularly beating 1 seeds, just like all the time. I made a Final Four with 2 16 seeds in it one time. I was a 1 seed. There were 2 16 seeds in the Final Four. So
the main takeaway from this show is that I have been playing this game for 23 years. That's not great.
That's not great. All right, so that's our final thoughts on EA Sports. We're going to close this podcast with Ari's diet hack. We teased it at the beginning of the pod. He told us we had to talk about this. Ari, you have found a secret here, and what is that?
I've lost some poundage since January, so like I think I'm on a pretty good trajectory here. But Popeye's blackened chicken tenders, like I don't know if you guys have had these, but it's like 280 calories for 5 of these big blackened tenders, and it's seasoned with the same stuff that the fried ones are seasoned with, and it's got like 40 grams of protein in it. You can get 10 tenders for like 580 calories and 80 grams of protein. And I think I'm going to eat this without sides and sauces with a diet soda for lunch every day for the rest of my life.
I think Steve Jobs does that actually, or did that. I will say, by the way,
not anymore. Not anymore. Doesn't do that. No.
Blackened seasoning is not anything crazy. It's like garlic and onion powder. It's like paprika, cayenne. Like there's some.
Yeah, I don't know what they did. All I'm telling you is that it was amazing, and like I felt like I left Popeyes after eating a real good meal, like with potatoes and fried chicken. I just wanted everybody to know that if you're trying to get your protein intake up and watch your carbohydrate intake, but you're somebody who likes to partake in a fast food meal, I think that you should give this a shot. Now, they're not a sponsor. We wish they were.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible.
It's just serendipitous. I ate at Popeyes in Paducah, Kentucky yesterday, actually.
Did you get pig's feet or something?
No, I got a very normal meal, but I was sharing it with my 2-year-old.
What was weird about it? Tell us what you got.
What was weird?
We'll figure it out.
I got the chicken sandwich. The spicy chicken sandwich, and then I just got fries with it, and then I got a tender and some mac and cheese and a biscuit, and shared it with my 2-year-old daughter, who did not want to sit in her high chair. She wanted to sit in a regular chair, and then against all odds, was like pretty good sitting in the chair eating her food. So
that's the first meal I've ever heard you order that didn't have a weird twist to it. I'm proud of you.
So Ari, how did you find out about this?
I saw it on Instagram. Somebody's like, "Is anybody?" They're not on the menu. That's the best part.
Oh,
and they kind of take a little bit longer.
Yeah,
and you also you have to take. It takes a minute because they're not just sitting in the fat with the fried chicken. They have to make it so it's always fresh. I've eaten it 2 days in a row, and I'm feeling like better than I ever felt in my life. Like I'm running it back on Thursday when this podcast is out and you're listening to it. Like I am eating Popeye's blackened tenders. They're kind of expensive.
How much?
It cost $18 for me to get 10 tenders in a Diet Coke.
That's not too bad. 10 tenders is a lot. But no sides.
At a fast food restaurant, that's a lot of money.
But you got 10 tenders. If you get the spicy chicken sandwich meal, that's like $10.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of meat.
10 tenders is a lot.
It's a lot of meat, and it's certainly satisfying. And I don't think there's a more satisfying meal on the face of the earth that has 600 calories, 80 grams of protein, and no carbs. Like it is unbelievable. It's like Unbelievable.
That's probably right.
So why do you think this is hidden from the menu and they're not
I don't know.
advertising it
I
as
don't
like a
think that
healthy
people go to
alternative?
Popeyes. I don't know if Popeyes' whole thing, I don't think is like to capture the health. That's why it's a hack. I mean, I don't know. Like I would be
McDonald's
the front man. Like if they were like, eat here every meal for the next 6 months and weigh in at the beginning and weigh in at the end and like chop me around like Jared Fogle, but you know, without all the creepy stuff. I would do that. Like that is
yeah, that's a dangerous wormhole to go down on.
yeah, I don't want to be. I'm just saying, build a campaign around me, okay? We don't need to go down the subway problem. I saw the HBO documentary. It was that guy belongs where he is, but it's just that potential is there. You would lose a lot of weight if you ate that for lunch and dinner every day, and that was all you ate.
I'm intrigued by the blackened seasoning. I might try.
Just go get it if you're interested. If you want to
go
to
a Popeyes
get a fast
very
food
close
meal.
to my house. So,
yeah,
I mean,
1 mile from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too, actually. So, all right. Well, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, let us know by leaving a comment. Please review and give us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really means a lot and helps out the pod. Check out the YouTube channel. We've got that up and running again. The link is in the show's description. We're back on YouTube, folks. We got some comments from people who were glad we were there. Appreciate everybody who commented and saw the YouTube channel. We're back there. You can also find links to any of the related stories we mentioned today in the description, along with the Until Saturday newsletter. A programming update before we head out as well. We will only have one podcast episode next week because we've got various media days, duties, and stuff going on. But we are on the doorstep of conference preview season and a show cadence increase. So we've got more coming. We just have one next week. It's a mailbag episode, a pretty big mailbag episode. Highly recommend you guys are ready for that. Subscribe to the feed if you have not already, so you can stay updated on all of that. And for that mailbag episode next week, please leave us a voicemail with any questions, comments, or I guess concerns. The number is 316-462-9852. We'd love to hear from you and dive into your questions. So thanks everybody for listening, and we will talk to you later.